All right. Now this Monday was President's Day. Did you do anything fun for President's Day?
Um, I I started my new job, so that was exciting.
Oh, nice. What do you do?
Oh, I just work at a store at the university mall. Oh,
Excellent. Are you a retail person then?
I am. I work at a clothing store called Maurice's.
Oh, geez. Man, you have got to have an amazing constitution. Post-COVID, retail, my daughters, I have kids that work in retail and stuff, and I cannot believe the ratio of people that are inconsiderate and thoughtless when they go in person to a store is astounding post-COVID because a lot of people don't realize that this is not pretend. This is not just texting back and forth, that these are real human beings. And I
Yeah,
think most everybody is still pretty decent, but it is amazing to me post-COVID it's a lot easier for a lot of people to be disconnected from just the normal civilities of life.
it's true. Like I've been pretty lucky with my jobs. People are usually very polite, but you get the occasional person who, might be having a bad day or just isn't thinking in the moment, but just try to show them kindness anyway.
I'm glad you do that. One of my one of my daughters works at a customer-facing job. She cuts material for people and answers their questions and stuff like that. And she said that 99 out of every 100 people are really decent and they're wonderful. And she said that the biggest problem is not that there are rude people, but the rude interactions are the ones that you happen to remember.
Yeah.
And I think that's so I admire everybody who's in customer facing jobs as human resources or retail. I admire you. So we'll just that is pretty amazing.
Thanks.
Well, this week I'd hoped that we would have people that had gotten their stuff done and turned in so we could talk about it. And I don't see that has happened. And it doesn't surprise me. It's not due until next Wednesday. But what I do want to do is I pulled up stuff from previous semesters and I wanted to go through and talk about these things. And, look at them, critique them, see what's good, see what doesn't work. And Mary, if you have any questions about assignments or whatever that we're doing right now, please let me know. I had, I also want to mention as people go through stuff, there are some assignments that really depend on previous things. Like, for example, in each of the modules, you have basically an artist review where you have to critique work, follow the prompts for the different paragraphs that I provided, and write a short essay about work that you've seen. And that is specifically tied to the artists in the background section of each module. We've talked about that. But as you go through and do your research or service learning stuff, it is dependent on the previous research and service learning assignments. So it is you have to do things in sequence or in order in order to get it to work. I mention that because I have had some people who have turned in, for example, their artist their artist what's it called, annotated bibliography, who have not yet done their declaration of whether or not they're going to do service learning or artist research. And so for the three people that haven't done that yet, make sure that you get the artist research or service learning turned in and then you will see several assignments disappear as I go through and pull you off the things that you're not going to be doing. Because nobody's going to do either both artist research and service learning. Everybody's going to do one or the other, and that's it. And I did have somebody turn in an assignment that was a screenshot from a cell phone, which is just fine, but it was for a photographer from India, and that completely baffled me. So I hope that person fixes that and turns in the correct assignment. And I have had, not in this class, I have had a couple assignments turned in that were very obvious AI assignments. And the problem with that is AI is a tool. It is not something that replaces your thinking. Nobody in their right mind wants you to write an essay because they love to read student essays. I say nobody in their right mind. I have met one person who did actually enjoy that, but the essays are there to demonstrate your observations and your thinking, and that cannot be done by somebody else for you. So feel free to use AI as a tool, but do not use it as a replacement because we are working on your brain. We're not working on your ability um, to put in work that isn't yours. So I wanted everybody just to remember that. I also wanted to mention too that some people are getting behind on assignments. Please get your stuff turned in. I am going through I am going through and assignments that are not turned in uh, by the due date get zeros until you resubmit with the correct or updated assignment, or you resubmit with the correct format. And the people that have been turning in their annotated bibliographies, there have been several that were absolutely perfect first time around, but most, there's going to be a couple things that are a little bit wonky or a little bit off, and just fix what I'm saying to fix and then resubmit it. And please do not erase the comments in the comment box on the assignment um, until you get your final grade. So those are the things that I wanted to double check that everybody understood. All right, I am going to go ahead and share my screen now and talk about the structure and skin assignments that have been submitted in previous semesters. All right. Okay, Mary, your microphone is picking up stuff.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, your microphone is picking up stuff. Is there any
Okay.
way to mute it?
Yeah, I can mute.
Okay. And if you are able to talk about this, go ahead and unmute yourself. But what I'm doing right now is showing structure with skin assignment, and this was done in spring of 2025, so a year ago. And I'm just going to go through each of these and talk about what makes them successful and what makes them less than successful so that you guys get a better idea of what you're doing. I did have a really good question. Somebody said, "Hey, can I do organic shapes for this as the modules?" And the answer on that is you can do whatever you want, but it is going to be much more successful for you if you follow through the examples that I've shown that I've said are good and the directions. And the directions are you make 5 to 8 modules that are about the size of your fist, a baseball, or a softball. And simpler ones, I recommend doing more. More complex ones, keep closer to that 5 perhaps. And then after you make those modules out of the structure, apply paper to them in such a way so that we have a balance of both structure and papers, that the paper is in front of some things and behind other things, and it intrigues us to want to go around and look at everything all around. And in the assignment, I do say there are there in your kit you might have 3x5 cards. That's the size of the cards that you get in the kit. I don't know if they're 3x5 or 4x6 or whatever, but I do say in there 5 to 8 modules. And I would recommend if you're going to do like a four-sided pyramid, I would recommend doing 8 modules. If you're going to be doing smaller modules, do more. Like we did, I did show you a picture last week of one where somebody did four-sided pyramids that were smaller than 2 inches, and that I would make like a dozen of them easily. Because what we're going to be doing is making a sculpture when you're all done that's about the size of a basketball, and it needs to be able to activate this volume of space around it, as well as demonstrating a balance of structure and skin. Now, this first image, I kind of like the how the skin is placed. Because they used a really dramatic color, and I think if you use dramatic colors like black, then maybe you can get away with a little bit less skin than if you use colors like taupe or white. Um, the really bright or stark contrast colors, you might be able to get away with a little bit less. But on this kind of structure, my concern is, yeah, I kind of like the skin, but I think this triangle right here in the very front deserves a piece of skin. Um, and maybe some others in the back that we see a little bit of. But the thing that really concerns me is not so much the structure and skin, but they do have these pyramidal shapes, but they are not consistent with the pyramids. So there is no definable module. We have a four-sided pyramid right here in front, five-sided right here, five-sided right there, but the rest of it is just kind of connecting them with long sticks, and I don't see evidence of a repeatable or repeated module in this. So I don't think this is really a solid example of exactly what we're looking for. And I'm going to the next one now. There's some things that I really like about this one. One thing that I like is they elected for a four-sided pyramid, and it's an incredibly simple shape. It's probably the simplest regular geometric form. And so they made several of them. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I count at least 11 of them. And they put them together in a ring. And the way they put it together, I think, may kind of work because it's not completely even and predictable. But some of the issues that I have about this is, yeah, they did apply skin, but the skin isn't regularly applied. And maybe that would be okay. But some of the things I like about the skin is some of the pieces that seem to hide stuff. It seems to be in front. Other pieces seem to be a little bit behind, like this purple area and this red, but it's not really very consistent. And maybe that's not a bad thing, but it's not consistent coverage or consistent framing. And again, maybe that's not a big thing, but whether it's consistent or inconsistent, it does feel a little bit out of balance. And maybe every other one has a skin on it, and that's appropriate, and that's just fine. But it feels to me like this one might need a little bit more skin to be completely even. However, I do like the dramatic colors and stuff like that. It does kind of help itself. If this was all the same color, then I think it would probably require definitely more skin. So I like the number of modules, simpler module, but they did more of them, about 12 of them, it looks like. And the skin, I'm a little ambivalent about. Maybe this would look different if I had multiple views to look at. And one thing I do like is you can see right through here is that these pyramids are not attached in a regular and even way. It's kind of like this one right here with the orange in it is kind of pointing towards us. With the blue, it's pointing away. And I kind of like that. But it does feel that instead of activating three-dimensional space, it's still on one plane. It's a ring for the most part. And doing something like this, I think is really interesting. I like the concept, but maybe this would be more successful if the person made the modules and then played with them a bit before sticking them together and kind of experimented a little bit more with the skin. I think that it would be great to have one of these colors on one of the faces of each of these 12 modules, and then play around with how to stack them and build them up so that this explodes more like a star instead of reading as a ring on its edge. And I'm hoping that that makes sense. We're activating three-dimensional space. That means it comes out in all directions. It's not just a ring that stands up, because then you're just activating primarily two dimensions with a little nod at depth. This one I think is really, really interesting. Let's see if we can get a better. What what I like about this is that this person is elected for a simple module and they've made a lot of them. So there's several modules here. One thing that I don't like is that this is on a plane, just like that other one. And you can see it's a very even plane. It's a an arc. Something like this lends itself again to an explosion, so that all three dimensions are actively engaged. This also seems to speak to me like it really needs more skin. And if you're going to do something like this, perhaps each of these have only one piece of skin on them, but as you stack it, you rotate which piece of skin is forward. So like right here, we have a piece of skin that is facing us, right here, skin to the side. But the problem is the ones right, this one doesn't have any skin on it, and none of these have any skin on it. And that becomes a problem because then the structure becomes overpowers. This one I think is a really interesting idea. It's a good start. This person elected for a five-sided pyramid. This one, it is still a relatively simple shape, but it looks like they have one, two, three, four, five, six modules, which is good. That's a lot of modules. I think though that this needs two more. And I think the paper to structure ratio is really pretty good. But it feels to me like even though this is activated vertically and horizontally, there still needs to be more depth to it. I'm thinking attaching a module to this front side so it points out in some direction towards our general direction, and then another module up here that points away in a general direction, or even making attaching a couple on this so that it loops back, maybe one in the back here, maybe one in the front there, something like that to make this activate the volume of space, engage the volume of space around it a little bit more. So I think that this needs a couple more modules. I think this is another really, really interesting one that has a lot of promise. The modules, these are four-sided pyramids, and I like the different way that they've kind of put these together. Like this one is pointing towards us, this one's pointing away, these other ones do different things. I think this is really interesting. However, there's a couple concerns that I have. This is a very simple shape. They've only made five modules and then a little thing to brace the weight. This does kind of spiral around. I think it does a better job of engaging the space than if it was just a flat ring or something. But I think for this, even though I really like these veined leaves as the skin, they really don't hide anything. They don't function necessarily as skins. If somebody were to do this, I would say take that leaf veining and glue it onto another piece of paper so you can see the paper behind it, and then use that structure as the skin structure and see what that looks like. And for something as simple as this, instead of only five modules, I would go with eight and glue them in front and behind to more fully activate the volume of space around it. And I will say that as we go on, not all of these are the final products that people actually turned in, but I picked this stage so that we can look at them and critique them. So, Mary, are you able to see any of this? And do my comments, are they making any sense?
Yeah, I can see them, and it all is making sense to me.
Okay. Are you in a position where you could comment about this, why this would be, what are the successful elements of this, and what are the things that don't look quite as successful?
Yeah. Let's see. Aren't the modules themselves supposed to be 3D, not just
Right. Exactly.
one plane?
Right. So this person made these flat squares and use those as their modules, even though that's not what the module is. You're right. The module needs to be a three-dimensional form. Excellent.
Um, Otherwise, I think it's good. Maybe it could have used some more skin, but
Yeah, I think you're right. I love the shadow in the
mhm.
photography, but you're right. I think this does do a really good job of activating that volume of space. We have it almost looks like it's a spiral around a central shaft, and what that does is helps to engage the volume of space all around it. I agree. I think there should be more skin on it. I think that the things that would make this more successful is perhaps if they did cubes as their module and they made, 5 to 8 of the cubes, and then as they put those cubes together, instead of stacking them like Legos, attach them at angles. And if they did that, they could get this kind of spiral form without needing any sort of a central shaft like this does. And I think that putting two pieces of paper on each of the cubes and being mindful of those while they set them up, that would solve the skin problem. But yeah, exactly. I think Mary, you really are understanding. That's excellent. I think this is a really pretty good example of what we just talked about. This person did cubes as their primary structure. It was a relatively simple shape, so they made several of them. And what I like about this, yeah, we have a central thing right here, and then we have one that kind of loops away and then towards us, and a one that kind of comes up a bit, comes towards us a bit, and it just is really interesting to me because even though this starts towards us, goes away and comes towards us, and then this one starts away and then comes towards us, what happens is it starts feeling very balanced, and it also seems to engage three-dimensionality pretty well. I mean, it engages everything around it. Uh, to stabilize this, maybe they could put another cube right in between these two branches that come out. But you can see the paper. You can imagine walking around this, and you could see that each of these cubes has two pieces of paper for the skin, and walking around, you can see how it's going to hide some and show off others. It's going to frame some of the structure. It's going to hide some of the structure. I think that this is also achieves a pretty decent balance as well. Um, I think that maybe this cube right here might benefit from one more piece of paper there, but I think everything else seems to be pretty decent. I mean, this is not at all a bad example. This is another example of one that I think would look nice in the student show. If you guys wanted to put it, if somebody wanted to put it in the student show, but for this assignment, it does not fit. And the reason why it doesn't fit is primarily, Mary, can you tell immediately why it does not fit for this assignment?
So sorry, you cut out. What was that?
Can you tell why this does not fit for this assignment?
Um, aren't the same and some of them aren't 3D.
Well, this one has no repeatable module. I mean, there's no
Mm.
module. They just put sticks together. And even though this might look interesting to put into a student show, it does not function well for this assignment because there's no
Mm.
repeatable module. This is an interesting one to me because I think that this is another one that would go do well in the student show, but it is not fit for our assignment at all. Again, because there's no repeatable module. I do like the creativity about burning the it looks like paper towel for the skin kind of structure or skin. I think that's really interesting, but there's no three-dimensional module for this at all. This, I think, is another one that would do really well in the student show. And I think it's fun how they are doing the skin, but this is really difficult to tell what the module is. Maybe the module is um, they have two of these flat planes held together with these sticks. Maybe that's what the module is. But this seems to be more like it's designed as a tunnel. It doesn't activate the 3D space around it. Even though this is a really interesting way of addressing the skin issue, it doesn't feel consistent with the parameters of the assignment. Again, there's no identifiable module that's repeated, and it doesn't activate the three-dimensional space around it, and it does not, the skin is very difficult to read. But I think it's a creative idea for a module. If you wanted to make a module like that and then see what you can do with it, I think that would be very interesting. Now this one, this is we have the four-sided pyramid as the module, and they did some interesting things. And most of the pyramids are regular four-sided pyramids, and then this top pyramid and the second one down, they've changed it a little bit. Like this pyramid right here, the second one down, instead of having the top point attached to these other 2 points, they did it in the center, which is really kind of an interesting take on it. And then they did the same thing with right here, where this top pyramid, instead of a pyramid with the structure connecting all 4 points, they connected the center of this side to the top to that point there. I think that is really an interesting take on the module. And this one is bigger and these are smaller too. I think this one is looking better. I mean, there is maybe it needs another piece of skin right here. I think that would help to balance it out. But I do think it does a better job than some of the ones that we've seen of engaging that three-dimensional space around it. Now, again, I want people to understand that um, you can after we look at it and you resubmit, you can resubmit several different times. Student last semester resubmitted about 6 or 7 times before getting to the point where they were really comfortable with how they had done this. And I think this is, even though we look at this, it's a four-sided pyramid and we only have 5 modules. I think they did a really good job on this, and I'll explain why. One is the balance of paper or skin. Even though there's not a lot of skin, the surface area, I think, is enough to really feel like this is appropriate. We have the same a four-sided pyramid, and we have it in 3 different sizes. We have a small one here, a large one here, a large one here, and then these two are kind of a medium size. And we see the paper on these larger ones and on the smaller one. And I think even though each one doesn't have a piece of paper on it, because the larger ones have a big piece of paper on it, I think that is does start to achieve a pretty good balance. And if you can see how they attach these together, they didn't stack them, they didn't glue them on edges or anything like that, but they kind of rotated them and put them at different angles. I think it does a pretty good job of activating the volume of space all around it. Mary, can you see this one?
I can.
What do you think about this one? It does feel a little bit simpler than some of the others that we've seen, but what do you think about it?
I like it. I think it activates the space really well. You can see like almost every little thing about it, which is really cool. I always thought this assignment was cool because you can kind of see like inside of the sculpture. Um, I like it. I think they did a good job.
All right, excellent. Yeah, this is a really fun one to me, and I think it's a really good resolution. Now, there are some things that I really like about this, but I think there are some things that should be done that would, if done, would really make this one stand out. And one is we do have the four-sided pyramid again, but I think there are too few of them. And the skin, even though the skin is really an interesting type of take on it, it doesn't really fulfill the purpose of the skin. Now, if you wanted to do something like this and use this as one of your skin ideas, that's fine, but I would use it as one of the skin ideas. And on each of these, I would probably do, like, if we look at this very top pyramid right here, maybe the skin, the string across one side would be one piece of skin, and then maybe a piece of paper right here, like an index card with the lines on the card going a different direction than the string. That would might be really interesting on that side. And then making 8 modules like that would really be fantastic. The reason I don't think that this does a good job as activating space is that it is it looks like a tower with a thing on the side. And I'm thinking that if you want to make something like this, skew these pyramids when you attach them. Don't have all of them share the leg spaces, these edge spaces. I think even taking this top pyramid and rotating it 30 degrees off of this one, when you attach it, that would make it more interesting and engaging. And I think this should also um, would look better with pyramids stuck on the side to activate the volume of space around it better. Now, this is an interesting one, and this goes back to that one we saw with all the squares, where there really isn't a module on this that's repeated. The person just made a whole bunch of triangles, put skin on some of them, and then put them together. So this really does not, even though it's interesting in its own right, it does not fit the parameters of the assignment because there's no identifiable three-dimensional model that's repeated. I think this one is a really interesting one. And I see a little bit of a repeating module here and there, but even though this is a really interesting way of addressing the skin issue. It's not photographed very well. We can't, I mean, there's a very strong blue color, and we don't want to show off our artwork with obvious filters like that. But also, the fact that there is not a repeatable module that we can identify makes this so that this is not a good fit for this assignment. I do think it does a nice job of activating space around it, but it doesn't fit the assignment parameters. This is another one that is really, really interesting, but again, does not fit the assignment parameters. Even though there's a couple different unique takes on the skin solution issue, the biggest problem with this is that there's no repeatable module. And I don't really, and even though it does activate space, there's no real consistency with what we're looking at. There doesn't feel like a balance of skin and structure. Like this is one that is really interesting. This only has 4 modules. The modules are repeated. I think with 6 modules, this person could turn this into kind of a star shape. But I think with 8, this could really be interesting. with different ones where they attach pyramid in front and back on different sides. Maybe not, they don't all share the same point, but some of them are skewed, some of them are candywampus. I think this could be has a potential of being really interesting. And this is another one where immediately we can look at it and tell there is not a repeatable module. So even though it is really interesting, it's a fascinating structure, it still does not fit with the module parameters or the assignment parameters. And that is the test student. So I hope that this has made sense as we look at those um, different examples. I'm hoping that that makes a lot more sense as to, what kind of thing we're looking for. And I'm going to do something here really quick that I should have done earlier. Let's see. I'm going to show you some more in just a second. I just have to set up the area. Let's see. Okay. I'm sorry about that. But I'm hoping as we look through these, you guys are getting a better idea of the kinds of solutions we're looking for and the kinds of things we're looking for in this. And I kind of like, let's see, let's see. What I'm doing is going back through a lot of these images and removing the name information so you guys don't see that. And again, this is something that I should have done earlier, but I did not realize that I had not done it. So, and then we'll look, and some of these I think are really pretty decent, but one thing I did want to mention is that remember last week we did talk a little bit about the student show, the student exhibit. Um, what is now online is you can go to the um, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. We can go to the website right now, and you can actually uh, register for this for the student show now. You can upload your images and stuff like that. And I would recommend highly that you do that. I think it's a really great opportunity. And what is fascinating to me is if you don't tell people what kind of a grade you got on, for example, an assignment that you're turning in as an entry into the show, nobody has to know. I mean, I would recommend doing things that you've done that mean something personally to you. But if you've done something that's where you really nailed an assignment or you really feel confident about it, I'd say go for that and put that in too. But definitely go to what's the name of the on-campus? Um, Mary, do you remember the name of the on-campus museum?
I do not. Is it like its own like separate building? Because I know in like the GT building they have that little tiny exhibit?
It is its own separate building. Let's
Okay.
see. I'm gonna. Okay, give me just a second again. I'm doing like 14 different things. I'm trying to find. Okay, here we go. Exhibit. Let's see. Okay, the 2026 student exhibition timeline. Um, the entry period goes through February 20th, so that's Friday. The deadline is on Friday, and you go to, oh, it's Woodbury. It's the Woodbury um, Museum. So let's see, I'm gonna look up UVU Woodbury um, Student Show 2026. I will find this and I will send the link to everybody. Okay, let's see if we can find it here. Okay, that is not it. For whatever reason, it took me to the Entrepreneurship Center on campus. Okay, I'm going to find that um, exhibit information and email everybody as soon as we are done with today's lesson so that all of you guys have that if you guys want to join. And I am really sorry. I did mention it, but I did not push it very hard. I would recommend highly if you have something that you think would be interesting to show. I don't think it costs anything to get in. It doesn't cost anything to apply. And if you don't get in, there's other shows that you can try for as well. So let's see. Okay, I am going through and trying to remove some of the um, name information. I'm gonna keep doing that eventually. But what I'm trying to do is get a couple examples, find a couple examples for us to look at that are really solid and good. And although I do like going through each one and talking about why it's successful or not, I want to be able to show you guys some really good examples. Hmm. I'm sorry, I'm not having a whole lot of luck. It looks like some of the problems that people are having too is that they wait until the last second and then they make it tiny and try to bring in the camera as close as possible so it doesn't look like it's tiny. And that is not a good way of doing it. Because, we can usually tell scale pretty easily. Okay, here's a couple that we can look at, I think. So I'm going to try to do the screen share thing again. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I don't think that I got it right. Give me just a second here. Okay, here we go. All right, Mary, can you see this?
Yep.
All right. Now, as we look at this one, we can see right away they have a five-sided pyramid that is the basis of their geometric module, but it's not quite the module. It looks like it's a pyramid, but instead of having the edges join at the corners of the base, it joins at the middle of the base, which I think is really an interesting way of doing this. And then the skin is attached. There's one piece of skin that's attached, or sometimes two, that's attached edge of uh, popsicle stick to edge of popsicle stick. You can see that there's orange right here, there's orange right there, yellow right there, yellow right there. And then the other element of skin is they used orange and yellow paper that they wove for the bottom of each of these five-sided pyramid structures. I think that is really interesting. They made six different modules. So this is a giant, it looks almost like a jack, like a toy jack. And I think that is really interesting. It does work to activate the volume of space all the way around it. The things that are interesting to me is that it doesn't follow any of the expectations. Like I talk about it, try not to um, be completely even and set as you put these things together. And this, you can see this person they joined the peaks of all six of the pyramids together. And they did it very evenly, very predictably. We also talked about the kinds of shapes we're expecting. And this person went completely against that. And they added paper in unexpected ways and did weird things with the paper on the bases. So each of these modules are identical, and but I think that this ultimately does work. The reason why I think it does work is we can see, even though we have a lot of skin on it, we can still see quite a bit of structure. We can see the structure on either side of this principal piece of skin that's forward facing. We can see that pretty clearly. Even though the geometric form isn't one that we talk about, they've done a pretty good job making consistent geometric modules. All of them are the same. They are different than what we expect, but they're very consistent. And even though this doesn't activate the space in the way that we have been talking about and expected, I think it still does a really good job. So even though this goes against the majority of our expectations of what we've been talking about, I still think it does a really good job at addressing the principal concerns for this assignment. What do you think about this one, Mary?
Um, I think it is really cool. I like all the different colors and the woven like checkered paper is really cool. So I think it's really neat.
Yeah, I think it works well. I think it fits. Now this one, we can look at this one, and this reminds me a lot of that Olympic sculpture that's up in Salt Lake, which was great for the Olympics. But some of the issues that I have with it is, again, there's not a repeatable module. Even though this right here looks like an octahedron, which is a great module to make and repeat, um, we don't see a repetition. It's triangles that are set in different places. It's not a repeatable module. Another thing that I think is could be done better is having things off to the side so that it activates all the space around it. I think this is primarily, even though it does stick up, it's primarily built on a single plane, and we see the edge. I really like this sculpture. I think this is really interesting. And what is fascinating to me is there is a module. It's a skewed um, prism, and you can see it's this shape right here, and this shape is repeated. The shape is repeated right here, here, here. So it looks like there's four or five of them. Yeah, there's one in the center right here too. And I think that is really an interesting approach to this. It's a fascinating module. Some of them have all the corners are attached. Some of them, like this bottom one, it's missing a stick right here. And I think that even though, and this one only has one piece of paper on it, and this one has like three, this one has two. I think what's interesting is that this could use a couple more pieces of paper, but I think it is a really interesting and worthwhile solution to the issue. It is really doing a good job of approaching what we're looking for. And this module sticks out towards us. This sticks away. That points directly away. This is to our side. I think it does a really good job of activating space around it too. What do you think about this one, Mary?
I agree with what you said. The shape is really cool. I'm trying to connect all the dots. I think I can see it, but yeah, I think it's really cool how they activated all the space around it.
Can you kind of see this module being repeated? I mean, it's not repeated exactly. Like the shape right here, the way it's repeated there, this leg right there is a lot shorter. So these 2 points are
Mm-hmm.
close together. But I think it's really an interesting take on it. I think that's fascinating. Now, this one, again, a big problem with it is it doesn't have that geometric module. There's no repeating three-dimensional module. And I think that's the person does a disservice to themselves because they're not, following directions in the module. This is interesting and has some interesting potential, but again, a big thing that's missing is the three-dimensional module. Now, I think this is fascinating, and what is interesting about this is another example of, we have the triangle space right here, we have another triangle right here, and then they attached the apex of this to the center of this edge, and the apex of this to the middle of this edge, and that's their module. So it's a really interesting kind of thing where you have two triangles, full triangles, and then you have the edge of one triangle connecting towards the middle of another one, and the edge of or the point of the last triangle connecting to the middle of another one, which I think is really a very fascinating take on this. So that one fills that parameter. It has a repeating module. And it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modules that they have. And this is kind of squat. It doesn't stick up really high. But what's fascinating is that none of the modules are laying flat. They're all at different angles to each other. And even though this is squat, I think it does a really good job at activating that volume of space around it. I think that's very interesting. What do you think about the balance of skin to structure, Mary? Do you think it needs more skin, or do you think that this is pretty good?
I like it. I think they did a really good job making sure it was equal all around.
One thing that I kind of like is this piece of skin hides the majority of the module. Looks like it's almost at the bottom of the module. These three pieces, the skin is almost facing us. And on these three, like especially this one, they're almost on edge. And I think that's kind of a fun thing to see how the angle of the skin, it causes our eye to see different things when it's at such different angles. I think this is really interesting. All right, well that was so I looked at what, like 20 different examples of these, and it looks to me like one of the common things that people don't do is we're not getting or we haven't gotten in the sample set a lot of people that are making the same modules that are repeating. And another thing that looks like it's a little bit missing the intent of the assignment is people are either building on a plane or in a tower. And the ones that are successful, you see that some of the modules are really weird, but they're repeated modules. And that's really kind of interesting. I think some of the more successful ones, the modules were attached in irregular and unexpected ways, which I thought was really fascinating. Um, it seems like a lot of these didn't have very many skin pieces attached, and I think they would definitely benefit from skin. But like some of the ones that we looked at that were successful, when the person set it up, they were paying attention to where the skin was on the different modules that they had. Sometimes the skin is between us and the structure, and sometimes it's on the far side of the structure. And that one that we just saw, the skin is sometimes on edge, so we barely see it, and sometimes it is there so that we can see the whole, um, all of the skin. And I think those are really interesting. They make it very dynamic. So as you put this together over the next week, what I would recommend is starting off with a module. Make at least one more module than you think you need, and then just kind of experiment with different ways of putting it together. Maybe even put the skin on the modules before you start experimenting so you can see what it does. And I would say use different kinds of skin because we've seen in the examples last week and this week, we've seen examples where the skin was printed paper, where it was red, where it was white, where it was black, where it was other solid colors. Some of the skin we've seen, like last week, it was plastic wrap with marker on it, which was interesting. I think this week we saw an example where it was translucent. Last week we saw some translucent plastic as well. I think a couple of the things we saw this week that I think were interesting is like that one person made skin pieces that were woven paper, which I thought was really interesting. Some of the stuff that I thought had potential was somebody wrapping thread and using that as a skin area. I think for that to be successful, we talked about this um, using on each of those same modules a piece of solid paper would make that the string thing fit more in line with the idea of string. I'm sorry, it would fit more into our expectations of like a skin type area. Because if our brain sees that right next to a piece of flat paper, and we can tell that those strings are very different than the structure, then our brain is going to start associating that with the skin as opposed to the structure. But because there was no paper with those, um, it ends up not reading as associated with the skin. Well, when we saw the leaf, the veining on the leaf being used as skin, that could be successful if the veins were on something translucent or if the veins themselves were on a different color of paper so we could see the veins more. That would be interesting. I think sometimes like cut up books make for an interesting skin, and I would do not ever cut up a book that's not. I would recommend highly not cutting up a book that you don't first own completely by yourself with nobody else sharing with you, and second that is already partially destroyed or something. My mom, who was a librarian, would be rolling in her grave, and she will haunt you if you cut up a book that is still usable. But like magazine pages, stuff like that, I think that would work. And if you go to Hobby Lobby, one of the things that can be interesting to try if you're interested is walk down the aisles and you will see free sheets of paper that give directions for doing different of the different projects. And grabbing like a few of those, you can cut those up and use that for skin, and that would be very interesting. You'd have images of something, and you'd also have text that could be used. And but again, I do like that one that we saw that was red and yellow, where it was woven together. That was unexpected. So the modules don't have to be straight geometric solids. They can be like we saw one module that it looked like a couple um, trapezoids put together with a couple extra pieces on to make them three-dimensional. I said that they were kind of a skewed prism. We saw a couple that were pyramids where some of the edges attached instead of going from point to point, were from point to the middle of one of the edges. And that makes for an interesting module. So think about that. But one of the consistent things that I saw for the ones that didn't quite meet our expectations were that the person did shapes, either three-dimensional shapes or just flat um, pieces like the squares or triangles, and put those together instead of turning them into actual copied modules. And again, that is one of the primary parameters of the assignment, making 5 to 8 modules that you can repeat and then put skin on and assemble. So I hope that that really helps again as people are working on this. Sunday is the due date so that we'll have stuff to look at on Wednesday. And I wonder how many of you have gotten feedback and resubmitted your object, um, like the wire object, and gotten a better grade. Mary, were you one of the people that resubmitted the wire to get a better grade?
I was, yeah.
All right, did it work?
It did. It went from 22 to 25.
Excellent, very good. All right. So I try really hard as soon as I see that you resubmit, I try to go back and update the grade as quickly as possible. I had one person was getting upset with me about 2 semesters ago. They kept resubmitting and the grade wasn't changing. They were wondering why. And the reason was, yes, they kept resubmitting, but they had mislabeled a file and were submitting the wrong thing. So it wasn't the correct assignment. And when they finally looked at what they had been submitting, um, they quickly fixed it. They got a much better grade. So, but if I don't regrade it within like a day or two, please email me directly and let me know, and I will fix it just as soon as I can. So, all right, Mary, that is pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. Do you have any questions about other elements of what we've been doing or assignments?
Nope. And the questions I did have were answered, so
All right,
all
excellent.
good.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks for joining me and Mary, especially. And thanks for everybody who tunes in and watches the recording. These are designed to help and supplement and answer questions about the assignment. And I hope that seeing examples of both real successes or things that were interesting that didn't quite meet the parameters of the assignment, I really hope that helps as you move forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people are turning in next week. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.